good morning and welcome to Sunrise Daily. I'm Chamberlain Uso.
It's the day after. The day after what will depend on you, but hey, it's the day after October 1. And I'm inclined to say happy post-Independence Day. Good morning and welcome. I'm Malcolm Yusuf.
Well, you haven't really said it, so you can as well go ahead and say it. Amaya Bakide, good morning and welcome to the show.
So where's this, guys? What's going on?
Yeah. I think the sign is right there. I think the view, for anyone who can read that, they can certainly see just what is going on. It's a palace. It's a palace, the Emir's Palace of Argungu. I just learned how to pronounce that properly this morning. Argungu. And if I'm still not pronouncing it right, I think those
good luck to them.
those who are from Beck and Colin and say, hey, Malkwe, that's still not how to pronounce it. But I used to say Argungu, and I was told, no, it's Argungu. So that's the Emir's Palace of Argungu in Kebbi State. And you know what Argungu is famous for? That fishing festival that happens once a year.
I still wonder, does it still go on?
It does, on a very big scale.
Are they making a meal out of it?
Well,
ought to be.
That will now be questions that we should ask the governor. But it is something that the people of Argungu they've embraced, and they're marketing very, very strongly in that particular area. Don't forget that I think only recently was also the governor of Taraba who also took up another festival that happens in their own area. I think it also happens once a fishing season or so. There's something that they do. They fish in that river one time, and that's it. And there's a competition as to who catches the biggest fish, and that fish is displayed as the prize fish. I think a person gets a lot of money. But almost anyone who knows anything about the north of Nigeria knows about the Argungu festival. Only recently, teaching my daughter, because of this Independence Day celebration, I mean, they had assignments learning about their country. And she had to learn about northern Nigeria. And one of the things that she was asked to do was name a festival in northern Nigeria.
Yeah, many.
I thought about it. I was like, okay, would the Durbar count as a festival? I said, well, it doesn't have Durbar festival there. It just says Durbar. Yeah. It's a celebration. But I said, we certainly cannot mistake Argungu. So let's go with Argungu. And she was asking me, Mom, what does that mean? So it's a good thing. It's a wonderful thing. And it's interesting that today we have the visuals of the Emir's Palace in Argungu staring at you on your screen. So if you've never been to Kebbi, well, we've been there for you. You might want to consider it a worthwhile trip, perhaps, when the Argungu festival is on.
I just wonder if maybe when we get to hear from them sometime, the organizers, how they've sustained this over time in spite of the challenges. How do they keep up with ensuring that the fish is there, organic? People still go ahead and do all of that, and then water, the kinds of fish, those who come to participate. And then what they're thinking about, okay, for those who want to see it as a spectacle, taking it to the next level, a revenue generation, making sure that, different generations keep improving on all of those things. So those kinds of narratives, so that when you hear it, oh yeah, I saw this part of this, because a lot of these things I see globally, it's about marketing.
Indeed. That's what it is about. And guess what, Chamberlain? There was a time when calendars used to be all the rave, Company calendars used to be all the rave. And every year, companies used to be very intentional about what themes they followed. That was when I knew about the Argungu Festival, sometimes detailing the different festivals you have in parts of our country. That's when I first came across the Argungu Festival and displaying the fish or maybe taking pictures of that. And I think that we need to do a lot more. Yes, I don't really think we're still doing calendars. Are we still doing calendars these days?
I'm trying to buy petrol. I don't remember which that is what.
Oh, well, I don't know how it's been for you, but hey, this is what we're looking at. A piece of history. The Emir's Palace. The Emir of Argungu's Palace, all the way in Kebbi, northwest Nigeria. Don't forget that Kebbi used to be a part of Sokoto State. What do you make of it?
Well, honestly, listening to you and talk about how we market, from an issue that Chamberlain raised, only reinforces the reason that we are doing this every morning, to let people know that Nigeria is not all doom and gloom. It's also boom, B-O-O-M. So if we market what we have just as we do every morning on this program, I mean, you can just imagine. So yes, do we still make calendars? Well, some still do make calendars. But, even talking about, visiting all these wonderful places, the fear of insecurity is something that may distract people. But you can also imagine in all the times that we've been taking these shots, we haven't seen any place where the people are carrying guns or people are afraid to move around or anything. It's all peace, all lush, all over the nation. Different places that we have brought to you on this program, on this skyline. So yes, Nigeria is an amazing place. It's a wonderful place. These are the luxuries that we can see, the tourism potential that we can see. We're not even going to take the cameras underground to let you see all of those other things. No, we can't even do that. But it definitely is something to give attention to from time to time. Let each state be deliberate about marketing these wonderful icons of history and tourist potential that they have. Who knows what could come? One of the issues that we'll be talking about, of course, tourism is business, guys. So one of the things that we'll be looking at this morning will still be around that business morning on Sunrise Day. We'll bring that to you at the appropriate time. In the meantime, let's take you to the papers now.
Yeah, let's go ahead and have a look at the paper.
The front pages of the papers this morning are replete with stories around Nigeria's 64th independence anniversary.
The 35% increase in September last month. So I'm at a loss. What exactly is happening here? Maybe more, information would be provided on the following pages of the paper. The front page has the story, and 2 other pages on the inside pages has more details. Fuel importation hits 6-month high at 35% increase in September. Vessels berth worth 140 billion naira. And the NNPCL also says they've discovered 87 illegal refineries and connections in 1 week. All of these haven't quite answered the question of whether or not we've caught the oil thieves, and the crude oil thieves, and that they are being questioned correctly, and there are consequences. So all of these, there's so much confusion, so to speak, around the petroleum sector, which is Nigeria's cash cow as at now, while we are still making efforts to diversify our attention. So to help us understand what's happening here, we thought that with the upcoming on stream of local refinery, things will be easier, maybe over time. But then, just to give you perspective, that it is claimed that fuel importation increased by 35% in September. 6 months ago was the time it was higher than that. But that's my take this morning, Chamberlain.
The presidential broadcast is an integral part of the Independence Day celebration in Nigeria. And as Nigerians mark the 64th independence anniversary, President Bola Tinubu addresses the nation.
Fellow Nigerians.
First, President Tinubu acknowledges the economic hardship experienced by citizens, such as the rising cost of living, unemployment, and insecurity challenges. He promised to address them soon.
As I address it today, I am deeply aware of the struggles many of you face in these challenging times. Our administration knows that many of you struggle with rising costs and the search for meaningful employment. My fellow Nigerians, please be assured that we are implementing many measures to reduce the cost of living at home.
Aside from the issues of economic hardship, President Tinubu announces plans for a national youth conference aimed at discussing issues affecting young Nigerians and addressing them.
We lead today with the future we wish to bequeath to our children in focus, recognizing that we cannot design a future that belongs to them without making them its architects. Considering this, I am pleased to announce the gathering of a national youth conference. This conference will be a platform to address the diverse challenges and opportunities confronting our young people. The government will thoroughly consider and implement the recommendations and outcomes from this forum as we remain resolute in our mission to build a more inclusive, prosperous, and united Nigeria.
Some of the issues that President Tinubu promised to discuss at the National Youth Conference include education, social justice, employment, innovation, and security. Speaking to matters related to political reforms, President Tinubu insists on the implementation of the Supreme Court's judgment on local government autonomy.
As part of our efforts to re-engineer our political economy, we are resolute in our determination to implement the Supreme Court judgment on the financial autonomy of local government.
The president further highlighted the progress made in the fight against insecurity, fiscal policies, divestment in the oil and gas sector, as well as government's responses to natural disasters, such as the recent flooding in some parts of the country. As Nigerians across the country mark the 64th Independence Day anniversary, the coming days are expected to unveil the impact of the plans and initiatives of the government to address the nation's challenges.
Okay, so that and many more we're focusing on this morning. Mr. Ikeazu Akaraiwe is here with us. He is a senior advocate of Nigeria. Good morning, and thank you for coming on today.
Good morning. Nice to be here.
Yeah, and I don't know, how was your celebration? Was there really celebrations for you? What changed for you in terms of how it was then and then these days, if I could say that?
A lot of sadness.
Oh.
I don't live in Abuja, but I drove around Abuja yesterday. The sheer number of checkpoints, very friendly security men, but they barricaded the roads and there were no cars. Maybe I counted within Amak, the metropolis, not up to 50 cars. There were simply no cars. There's sadness and despair in the land. And there's a portent of something evil. There's something evil in the air. I'll just hold it there. But the people are miserable. There's despondency. Despondency is the word I would like to use to describe the situation in the country.
If I could refer to the speech which the president made yesterday, even from the first paragraph, yes, he appeared to acknowledge what you say about this despondency. And says this, I know. He says, look, he says he has heard the voices of the people. And he went on and said several other things in that speech. But for you, in context of where we are as a nation today, are you able to connect with the president's speech?
Let me say this. There are two things about every speech: the personality of the speech and the substance of the speech. The personality of the speech, we have abysmal speakers in Nigeria. We simply don't have good speakers in public office who can speak to the people with some amount of feeling or passion. I don't know the last time I listened to a president. I was 13 when Murtala Mohammed became the head of state. And that was a passionate speaker, for me. We were all so gripped. His 6 months, I don't think with the benefit of hindsight that he was a great leader now, but he's speaking. And speaking is a subset of leadership. When Buhari was the president, I needed an interpreter to know what he was saying. And I could go on and on and on. This is the clearest speech of the president. He normally speaks with a slur. He managed to be a bit clear. So the personality of the speech, well, he was clearer than he usually is. But anybody who seeks to lead others must realize that ability to speak and convey ideas and move the people is an ingredient of leadership. And you must get people to teach you to speak. They're experts. You know, I once read a book on newscasting, and I was amazed to read that the newscaster, when it's time to read sad news, he drops the voice and he goes sad. And when it's time to read happy news, he goes, upbeat, And I said, so even that thing we see on TV, there's even a method to it. To be a leader, you must be able to communicate ideas effectively and move the people that you feel their pain. Okay, look at, he said to us that things are difficult for you. I'm aware that things are difficult for you. How can he tell us things are difficult for you? Things are difficult for us. He must identify. Things are difficult. The cost of living has gone so high for all of us. But he said for you. So the president, whoever wrote that speech, and whoever his handlers, did not point out to him that you are the number one citizen, you are the chief servant. In their afflictions, you are afflicted. In the sufferings of the people, you show that you are a part of it. So he says we are not unaware that things are difficult for you. That simply says there's a gulf between the man who leads us and us. It should be, things are difficult for all of us. I feel your pain. We feel your pain. We are part of it.
When you talk about them speaking to the people, and what it should portend, the way leaders speak to the people here, but that on the one hand, but on the other hand, how do you see, will people be able to connect to that even if they speak very well? Because how people look at them, they look at the leaders and see what they do. And in that light, they will tell you, actions speak louder than the words. Yes. So will it apply here?
Thank you. Certainly it's difficult to connect with the speech. Certainly, for a number of reasons. For instance, the president informing us about national honors to the Chief Justice, the President of the Senate, the Deputy Speaker, and all that. It was a missed opportunity. Nobody in Nigeria cares about that. Nobody is going to connect about it. Yes, the Chief Justice, all CJNs get GCFR on the day they are sworn in. GCUN, yes. But now, what he could have said is that we have to encourage citizens. We have given a CFR to the taxi driver who returned $1 million found in his taxi. The airport worker who did that. The other one who defended when the mob came to burn up somebody's house. The people who stood between the mob and them. We've given them this award and this honor. It will arouse a feeling of patriotism, of altruism in the country. But you're telling us that the bourgeois, the ruling class, you've decided to give them this award. Who wrote that speech? So I'm just isolating that incident, that little one, to say that it is difficult to connect with such a speech. And you're right, no matter how well delivered a speech is, if it is low on substance, it is low on substance. But when a speech is delivered with feeling and passion, not without sentiment, when it's delivered with feeling, you may find that it moves the people. The president, the government, they are doing something about what is going on. But that was missing in that speech. Listen to, I don't want to go to America. We refer a lot to America. We've had leaders in Africa who, when they look at Museveni of Uganda, you hear him address his people with the passion and the feeling when he's speaking to his people. Look at the man in Rwanda. Kagame. So that is certainly missing here. All said and done, it is difficult. It was a wasted opportunity, a missed opportunity, and I cracked a joke in my heart to say, why don't we just abolish Independence Day speeches? Let's just forget it. Let's stay in our houses, because it has become routine. It's something that I must do, and then you just come and rehash the words that have been said before. But let's us not be all too hard on the president. One thing he said that I liked, he didn't just say we are doing something about insecurity. He said we have been able to neutralize 300 of the bandits and terrorists. I said that is a good one. 300 is an awfully small number, but it was nice to hear that you even have a figure. We have neutralized 300, and that you didn't say it was 3,000 or 300. It was a small figure, and that showed that there was some truth to it. So I like that. But what I had a problem with was the rest of it. We are doing something. We are putting in place measures. What measures are you putting in place? The first measure I want to hear is that I'm a successful businessman, successful accountant, and I have decided to put aside, let me just take a figure. Let me just choose a figure. I decided to bring out 10 billion naira from my resources. I have been blessed by God, and I'm putting this into the national treasury. Yes, and then you do that, and your vice president the next day does it, president of the Senate. When we hear that you people who have been in power forever, you are taken out of your blessings, let's put it in that way, and you decided to return it to the country because you realize things are bad. Let me tell you, Nigerians are simple people. Nigerians are very simple. We're very simple. We are so easy to lead. Nigerians will begin to sing your praise. They will stop speaking ill about you. Did you see what the president did? 10 billion. Whoever has done that. And then at the end of the day, you've been able to raise what amounts to perhaps $2-3 billion put into the cover, symbolic amount.
You know why I'm laughing? I'm chuckling a bit because, you're the one who said blessed. Let's just say blessings in quotes. And then some people say, oh, we know what that means. If you say you have been blessed immeasurably by God, and you have been in office forever, there'll be questions as to...
They were 20 years old and some of them are 70 years old.
So there'll be questions as to, okay, these blessings, how did you come about them?
But blessings.
Let us, move beyond that question, because some people say it might actually create more controversy than, calming nerves, as the case might be. But, I mean, you've raised quite a number of issues with the speech. You say that the speech is a bit out of touch. You're taking, issue with the fact that in the very first sentence, when he says, I'm deeply aware of the struggles that many of you face in these challenging times. Now, if he had said many of us, realizing very critically, that there have been criticisms that this administration hasn't exactly shown that it understands the times that we're in, especially with some of the priorities that we've seen, come up, new jets, even a new vehicle for the president, etc. There have been criticisms in that regard. Would that really have been truthful? I mean, wouldn't we also have taken issue with that to say, which us are you referring to? Because clearly, there is a gulf between, and you just referred to blessings, and you believe that, there are certainly the people who are currently in power today, I think it was the president's wife who has said over and over again that the president doesn't need our money, that we have been blessed immeasurably. So it would it really not have been hypocritical, assuming he had said, I realize I'm deeply aware of the struggles many of us face in these challenging times. Who is the us?
Yes, okay, let me rephrase. I am not unaware of the challenges we all as a people are facing, some more than others. In your sufferings, I am suffering too. In your afflictions, I feel your affliction.
But has he been able to demonstrate that? Or would that just be words?
Excellent. Good. So, what he might also have done in that speech is to say that we are also not unaware that the preponderant feeling of the Nigerian is that we have not identified with the sovereign of the people. I'm not aware that there's so much criticism about my getting a new jet. While I understand the feelings of Nigerians, that at this stage in our national economy, the office of the president had to get a new jet. But this is the situation which informed it. And then he concludes that thought with, it will be a disaster if there's an air mishap with the president on board. We have 8 planes. I don't know how many planes they have, but we have, for example, 8 planes in the national fleet. And we have made arrangements, or we have sold off 6 of them. We have sold off 4, and from the resources, we hope to recoup some of the cost of the new plane. But it is important that a president of a nation like Nigeria, easily the largest African nation, easily the largest black nation in the world, they should have a plane which is beyond reproach. I apologize for the timing of the purchase, but it was something we couldn't avoid. That would be such a feeling. That would be a democratic leader, not an imperial majesty.
Well, I mean, so I think the president's speech writers will, I wish they're watching this program. I'm sure they can learn a thing or two.
Know who they are, sir?
But let's take a look.
They can come to me for tutorials, free of charge. Free of charge, that's my patriotic duty.
You just heard that, free of charge, FOC, he says. But, you know, there are so many parts of this speech which I'd like to take on with you. One of them, I think you already highlighted, the fact that, you know, things are really rough for a lot of Nigerians. Majority of Nigerians are going through hell in this season, and we know that what has brought us to where we are today is not something that has happened in the last 1 year or 2 years. We are aware that we were well on the way to this point many years back, at least for as long as I've been on this job. And it was long foretold that if certain steps were not taken to avert disaster day, this is where we will get to. Would you really say that, you know, anything that anybody is going to say right now will actually affect, you know, how people really feel? Because this is the reality that they have to go through. This is the reality that they're facing on a daily basis. Food prices are out of their reach. Transport fares out of their reach, school fees, health. These are services that they can barely afford to pay for. Is there anything that anyone really could have said, especially someone at the level of the president who is not buying his food, who is not paying for transport? Is there anything he really could have said that the average Nigerian can say, okay, well, I can hold on to this?
Speaking, public speaking, contains a lot of potentials. And the better a speaker, the more sincere, the more feeling a speaker is, the more it moves the people. It can bring about change. Hitler defeated every nation in Europe except England, little England. And it was the personality of Winston Churchill and those his nightly broadcasts, addressing England every day. I promise you sorrow, tears, and blood. He didn't say, oh, Hitler used to say, there's going to be sorrow, there's going to be tears, there's going to be blood, but we're going to overcome. Well, we shall overcome. Every night he addressed England. They were huddled in their shelters, bomb shelters, listening to the Prime Minister speaking to them every day, encouraging them and comforting them.
Mr. Karewa, you and I know that if we had to leave it to oration since we returned to this independence, we might not have had any presidents. None of the people who became presidents would have been presidents if we were to leave it to oration. I mean, because we have since watched, say, the likes of Sir Tafawa Balewa. When you rewind to the very past, you know that we've had speakers in the past. And, you know, so you have to ask, where did we lose it? Where did we stop getting people who, when they speak, we all pause and watch the TV or we listen to radio? That has since stopped being, with due respect to all the speaking abilities of our past presidents. We know, at least I know, that it was left to that. I would not go out to vote anywhere. I would simply watch TV. That has stopped being an area of strength.
Yes. It's beyond oratory. President Shehu Shagari was not an orator. He was a ponderous speaker. But I remember him, perhaps he's one of the most regarded former heads of state of Nigeria. I think he's one of the best. With the benefit of hindsight, the things he said, the things he did. Shehu Shagari conferred the leader of the opposition, so to speak, Obafemi Awolowo, with the GCON, his major tormentor. Shehu Shagari, it was who brought General Gowon back to Nigeria. He was on exile. Shehu Shagari, it was who brought Odumegu Ojukwu back to Nigeria. He was on exile. And I remember his speeches, very simple, handsome man, with that his long Shagari cap, and he's talking and giving you reasons why he's doing the things he's doing. I was in the campus at the time.
He certainly was not Tafawa Balewa, was he?
He was not a speaker in that mode, but he was a feeling man. I'm talking about feeling, because you're saying that will already change the price of things. Like, I mean, that's what you're saying. It won't change the price.
No, that's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that it looks like we've since removed it from part of the criteria we require of our presidents.
Yes, we need to restore it, actually.
That's what it looks like we've done.
For example, permit this example. I don't want to wax religious, but the Lord Jesus Christ, read the Gospels, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. His leadership was conveyed by words. Words, he was forever speaking. There were times of signs and wonders, healings and so on. But he was a speaker, constantly speaking. Leadership and speaking goes hand in hand.
Talk to us about this, because, I mean, just listening to what you're saying, one wonders. Now, it appears as if there's something not just about the presidency or president, governments, ministries, departments, agencies.
Right.
Now, even when petrol was recently, I think one of those first times they increased it, when there was that sharp increase, and people were really angry. They still got to the top, the petrol pump, and attendants were still trying to cheat them.
Yes.
And then people still get on the roads, whether it's DRTS or whichever agency on the roads, they're still pummeling and harassing the people. Some tell you to go, no, your tire is bad. And then no, in some cases, those tires cost a fortune. And so you don't see that, well, I think you call the feelings. Is it the feelings of our infirmities? How do I call it that?
The feeling of our infirmities is correct.
There's no empathy between government agencies or government and the people. They all just seem removed. Even if the person came from the people yesterday and then you get into that position, there seems something that just seems to get disconnected.
Yes.
So what is it that is missing? Why are those things always coming across that way?
Two things. One, the carryover of military rule. Military rule did not care about the people, and there's a hangover. We are still,
how many years on,
operationally military minded, and so the BROT person, the person on the road who's controlling the traffic,
once you give him any uniform,
pummels, yes,
even if it's whichever one, just sew it, give to them when they get it. Oh, there's something else.
Then the second thing is absence of democracy, because many of those who come to office did not win the elections, with the greatest respect, because of rigging. The leader, the person who is there, does not care a hoot about the people. If you needed the votes of the people and you came to office by the votes of the people, you will mind how you treat the people. The potholes on the roads will be fixed overnight. The traffic police enforcer will not beat the people up anyhow, because the people are going to react. But there is maltreatment of the people, because the person in power really will continue to come back to office whether you vote for him or not. I know this is a sweeping statement, and I know that there are a few people who came into office by the ballot box, by the votes. But I would like to say that it is the exception and not the rule.
Which is why part of what we're asking yesterday about this forthcoming youth conference, that I wonder what that is going to do, because people ask, look, when they come into offices, young people try to vote, you won't let their votes count.
Yes.
They try that at local government level. Some governors still want to hold on to the realm of even local governments where the people should get basic amenities. So several layers. So all of those, as good as it may sound, it appears as though there's still. Okay, let me bring in I think he's got his questions. My colleague, before I go on the tangent. No, he's going to ask you more questions, actually, my colleague. Elias.
Okay, but
Ayo, go ahead.
I would like to talk about the youth confab.
Okay.
Can I go ahead?
Go ahead, quickly.
Okay.
Yes,
Briefly,
yes. That my hope is that youth confab is not for the APC youths a way of giving them some largesse. I hope that is not what it is about. So while I have read the paper reviews, people are criticizing the confab. The first thing government should do, get the leaders of NSAS, the 2000 October NSAS, get the leaders, ensure they are there and ensure that they are not arrested. The leaders of the August 1 to 11 event.
Leaders, but they said they were a leaderless movement.
Okay, well, the visible figures, at least I know of the DJ. I hear she's somewhere abroad. DJ is a sweep or something. Now, invite them and let it be public knowledge that they are invited to be a part of it. Because these are the people you go and get. I'm sorry for my language. You can get non-entities and put them there. They're all of them are party aficionados, and you give them plenty of money, and they come and praise the government from October 1 to the end of October. You've wasted our time. So let the government show some altruism, show some feeling again, that word again. Bring in people, this August 1 to August 11 people, those people you arrested and you are trying for treason. Bring them out and put them in the confab. Give them a pardon immediately. Put them there in the confab. Let them speak. Let us have dissenting voices.
You know, Mr. Karewe, one of the things that I see...
And we will respect the confab.
Yeah. My apologies for butting in, Mr. Karewe. I think one of the challenges is something you started with, which is communication. The fact that, first of all, the president indeed empathized, so to speak, with his opening speech. And you also noted that the words, the choice of words, were not as empathic as they should be, in more like finger pointing as much as being inclusive. So it would probably also speak to how we communicate with the young people. Because on the one hand, the speech had been written and the president has delivered it. And if you say that it doesn't particularly resonate with you, what's the assurance we have in the first place that the young people will even trust that this youth confab is for them, having not been in a way spoken in their quote-unquote language?
Yes, thank you for that. And that's a pertinent issue you have raised. The youth, to get the buy-in of the youth, will take more than a presidential announcement of a youth confab. The truth is that there is a disconnect. The truth is that the youth are not unaware that about 9 or 10 of them are being tried for treason, who came out to protest the hunger in the land. They are not unaware of the carnage that took place at the Lekki gates in October 2020 and the denials that followed. And then you now say you have a youth confab. I think people are going to stand askance. They are really not going to have a buy-in. That is why the government must do more than a presidential announcement. There should be an announcement tomorrow. We are inviting these specific individuals, some of those who are critical. We are freeing those young men who are being charged for treason, for the NSAS, not NSAS now, for the end hunger thing that they did. I think they arrested the tailors who were sewing Russian flags and so on. Bring them all out, free them, and let them be part of the confab. When this announcement is made and when there's a photograph of them, a video of them being released, then the youth will pay attention. Perhaps there's a new spirit upon the government. Otherwise, the general attitude, certainly my attitude, is one of cynicism. There's cynicism about the youth confab. But that youth confab can become something that will become a testimony to this administration. If you video it, if you send your cameraman, and we see you stand up and they criticize the government, and they say, government, you're not doing well in this area. And we see others who get up and defend the government. A kind of a parliament. Nigerians will be impressed. And perhaps at the end of the confab, you identify one or two of the critics and give them some appointment. These things you criticize, for example, distribution of the palliatives. Okay, we are putting you to be in charge, to be a part of it. And they try to carry the youth along. That is crucial. So without equivocation, we're going to say that it is greeted with cynicism, and they're going to pick, I think, supporters within the party to go and enjoy, stay in a hotel at government expense, and chop life for 1 month, and come out and praise the government.
I guess,
at the end of it, they go home with them.
Well, part of the reason we are here is to do what the Constitution says, and I think Section 22, which is to call government to account for all of those things. And of course, since you have brought it up, we'll definitely have our eyes on it, and I believe all Nigerians are as well. And by the way, talking about the youth confab, maybe one of those days we'll see the president in denim jeans appearing, sitting at a session. However, but there's something that you also said about reward. About reward. I'm looking at the National Honors Act, and I'm looking at the justification for each of the awards. And you said something earlier, which is something that has been talked about, in other countries, like, even in the United Kingdom, that, giving certain awards to certain people for certain things. I look at all the reasons given for the MON, for OFR, MFR, and all those things. Hardly do I see any award for anyone who has been a good Nigerian, who has returned money, who has given Nigeria a good name, who has excelled in their fields one way or the other. Those who excel in their fields, they definitely have a category. But for being good Nigerians, for being patriotic, for returning money, for not being corrupt, we do not see those in the National Honors Act, which of course dates back to 1964. Do you think it is something that can really, really help to raise the patriotic consciousness of Nigerians? What do we need to do if you believe so?
Yes, what do we need to do? The first thing definitely is to amend the act to expand the scope of those who deserve national honors. It is very sad that the national honors has become politicized, and you see the OFRs and the OONs after the names of those who are close to government. I understand that every state has a certain number of names they should submit, and the states submit always the politicians or those close to them. And it's another missed opportunity for us to whip up the sentiment of patriotism. It's a missed opportunity again, because if a school teacher who has served faithfully, who was that woman in Borno State who Governor Zulum identified, an Igbo woman who has been teaching in Borno State forever, and she's always the first to come to school, and it was all over the press a couple of years ago. You would think that the next set of national awardees, and an Igbo person in Borno State who comes to school by 7 a.m. and teaches, and in spite of the terrorism in that area, did not run away like the others, but stayed there. You would think that she will have an OON after her name. You have an OFR. What is the worth of the OON? There's no money attached to it. But there's something about it that an Igbo, a Yoruba, Isha, Ikwere, who lived in this part of the country forever, and is so dutiful that the governor singled out. The governor went to the school and said, "Hey, what a great citizen you are." It was all over the press. Yeah. Why doesn't she have an OON? Then the next thing, they give it to a politician or
big question. It
somebody
would
close to
seem
a
that that was
politician.
one of the areas where the Buhari. Sorry to interrupt your question,
Oh, thank you. That's all right.
But it would seem that that was one of the areas where the Buhari administration was getting it right, at least
Yes.
until the very last minute when it decided to dish it out, to the usual suspects. But it would seem that they were a little more intentional about giving, using it as a reward to recognize true effort, people who were actually wearing the Nigerian flag proudly and trying to change the narrative of Nigerians and who we are. As you mentioned, people who found money in the airport and returned large sums of money. So, I mean, how can we reset this clock? Because that's what we saw for at least 7 years of the Buhari administration until the 8th year when there was a bazaar. How can we institutionalize it? That word always...
I think that President Tinubu should do this one thing. The award he's going to announce in the next couple of weeks, apart from the 5 or 6 names he mentioned, let him drop all the politicians there, all the party faithfuls, all his friends, drop them from there and go and pick the taxi drivers, the street sweepers. Go and pick the farmers. Go pick them. The soldiers who are laying down their life every day. The policemen. Is there no intelligence on a policeman who refuses bribes? If they don't know some, I know 1 or 2. Give them these awards. Do it this year. Do it next year, and that symbolism alone will create a whiplash of patriotism.
Just one more thing before you go. Yeah. If it's true, as some have alleged, that the ways and means has not been cleared, as the president said, what would your thoughts be?
That the ways and means?
Yeah, you see, he announced yesterday that they have cleared the ways and means debt of over 30 trillion naira.
Yeah.
Now people are saying, no, that's not correct. That has not been cleared. And one lawyer says, look, he has it on good authority that it has not been cleared.
Well, my lawyerly instincts kick into play immediately. He who asserts must prove. But that's the Evidence Act, sections 131, 132 of the Evidence Act. He who asserts must prove. The president says 30 trillion naira ways and means has been cleared. He's the president, but there is, I'm afraid, a deficit of confidence, a trust deficit. So let him show us proof. Then Nigerians who are saying that it's not being cleared, show proof. Like the lawyer who says, I have it on good authority, it's not being cleared. Give us your good authority. But the president needs to go 1 mile extra because there is a deficit of confidence in government generally, not just his government.
Okay.
And then show us the facts and figures.
Thank you for coming on this morning, Mr. Ikeazo Akariwe, Senior Advocate of Nigeria. Always a pleasure to have you on. All right, so let's go ahead now for Business Morning on Sunrise Daily.
Well, hello and welcome to the first trading day of October, the first trading day of the 4th quarter of 2024, right here in Lagos, Nigeria. But let's get to the top stories that set your agenda for this, holiday shortened week right here in Nigeria. But the oil market, that's open for this week. Oil prices have jumped over $1 today due to rising concerns. Middle East tensions could escalate, potentially disrupting crude output from the region, following Iran's biggest ever military blow against Israel. Now we see yesterday was up about 2%. That was Brent, but we're still seeing that rise today, $75.08 a barrel, moving farther away from the $70 level. WTI, that's the U.S. grade, 2.29% up this morning, $71.43 a barrel. So all eyes, investors still watching what's playing out right there in the Middle East, and we're seeing the impacts on prices already. Could this escalate and take oil prices even higher? We'll definitely be tracking that and what happens next. But to the FX market, we'll see the last trading day of September ended with a marginal loss. That's for the NAFEM window. If we put up the FX markets, so it's a marginal loss about 0.08%. Then we see NAFEX that had a bigger drop there for the FX market. And we're in a new quarter now, so definitely all eyes on how the Naira is going to perform for this fourth quarter. But it's down for the third quarter, 1,541 Naira. That was a close, 0.08% down. NAFEX, 1,673 Naira, down 0.30%. So a lot of conversations about the Naira and strengthening. But yesterday, to celebrate Nigeria at 64, we had the Channels Economic Forum focusing on Nigeria's challenging economy and strategies for recovery. And we had a solid panel, of experts, private sector players, and also the public sector and the captains of industry to give us their expert view on the matter. So we had the Deputy Governor of Lagos State, Mr. Kadri Hamzat. He spoke about how Lagos is pushing to boost food supply. Take a listen.
We occupy 0.4% of the landmass of this country, but we populate our state with 10% of Nigerians. So what that means is the density is very high. Because we are the smallest in terms of land, but we are the most populous. What that means is there is not enough land for agriculture. There is some, but there is not enough. So when you compare it to a state like Niger, Niger is about 7.9% of the population, of the land mass of Nigeria, compared to 0.4%. So Ogun State is about 4 times bigger than us in terms of land, but the population is 3 million. So what that means is that the land available for agriculture in Lagos. So what do we then decide to do? Because we know we don't have enough land. So this country, for example, consumes 40 million bags of rice a year, okay? But Lagos, you can be sure, takes about 30% of that. So what that means for us, that's why we say, okay, let's build a rice mill that can process it. And then we have arrangement with other states in terms of partnership. We have land in Osun State. We have agreement with Niger State. But because of the insurgency, the paddies were not produced enough. So that's part of the challenge that we have. So for Lagos, our area is training people, empowering the people that actually get involved in agriculture, a lot of our women across Badagry to Ikorodu. So we identified our area of where we have competitive advantage. Fisheries, for example. Tomato, surprisingly. So tomato. We have an area in Badagry, Dadilui, they call the place, it's an island. We have 200 women farming, 200 hectares of land there. You need to go there, it's extensive. So what we do is how do we empower them? How do we make it easier for them in terms of production? But most importantly, we also now we are building a logistic hub in Emota, the biggest in this part of the world. What that does for us is it allows us to track what comes to Lagos. So Lagos, interestingly, we slaughter cows like 3,000 every day. So where are they coming from? How can we track it? How can we make sure that today, if anything happens, our veterinary doctors slaughter them and burn them off to prevent diseases? But we need to do better. What that means is, so if it's coming from Kano, for example, we can say, oh, Kano, you have this problem with your car. So stop it, let's help us treat it, and then we stop it. So the same thing, and then we'll be able to store grains for 9 months. So let's say production stops around the world. We should be able to store for 9 months and see what we're doing. So that's what we are building. And then we are building small markets, like the one in Idioro, where you and me can go. What that does for us is it gives us data. So today, we know that within 4 months, we know that those women and men selling in that market makes 2.1 billion naira. So we know that information. We also know that because they are now aggregating their produce and everything, the cost of logistics has gone down by 40% because they can get a trailer and then they move in. Also because there is dry storage, there is wet storage, and so on. They can actually store their products.
All right, that's the Deputy Governor of Lagos, Dr. Kadri Hamzat. And definitely, Nigeria also dealing with a cost of living crisis with headline inflation driven by high energy costs, with the shock of paying up to 1,000 naira Polita for PMS. Our panelists also, highlighted the issues and possible solutions to ending energy poverty in Nigeria. Take a listen.
Nigeria started importing crude in 1972. Nigeria is 64 years old today. So the problem is only about 12 years younger than Nigeria. So to your point, do we have a refinery? Yes, we do today. There's a huge opportunity to solve that problem, that 52-year-old problem. So from an energy security standpoint, it's huge. Whichever side of the divide that you see, it is a huge thing that today we can solve that. But I always say, before we talk about energy security, I think that's the way we need to frame this question. Before you say energy security, before you secure anything, you have to have it first. So actually, the point I'm making is, there are three sides to this coin. It's not two sides. There are three sides. The first side of the coin is energy access. Do we even have this energy? You walk out of here, probably not today, but certainly a month ago, 2 months ago, you see long queues. Does the energy even exist? Do we even have it? So energy access is number one. And there was a recent study by one of our analysts. If you take the average taxi driver, say in Lagos, he spends, believe it or not, a minimum of 72 hours in the petrol station queuing a month. 72 hours queuing. Sum that up into a year, probably works out to be about 35 days. That's about 10% of his year, just queuing. Non-productivity, that man can be working, contributing to the economy. He's not, he's queuing, spending time, all of that. So energy access, question one. If you do have the energy, then the second thing is energy affordability, and it leads to a question of price. And, we're going to have that discussion. So the second leg of the second part of that coin is energy affordability. We have the energy, can we afford it before we talk security?
But we're talking about accessibility, alternative energy. That's what everybody's talking about. The world is talking about renewables. We're still flaring gas, which is supposed to be potential to help us to gain on this. And we saw Mr. Tupac talk about, the costs. The number of people who have been excluded from even accessing this.
You're right. I'm going to maybe throw a shocker to the audience. It might not be a shock to some of us here. Nigeria has the highest deposit of natural gas reserve in the whole of Africa. Nigeria has almost about 6 trillion standard cubic meters of gas under the ground. So, question of availability shouldn't be our problem in Nigeria. We have abundance of gas. I'm taking this towards the direction of energy for transportation. For a thriving economy, people need to move from A to B. Goods need to move from A to B. So we need to move people around. So if we tap into our gas reserves, experts have it that our gas reserves will last anywhere from above 10 decades to 30 decades, what we have in the ground. Nigeria being the highest in natural gas reserves is still not exploiting it for obvious reasons. Everyone is focused on petroleum. And that's why I applaud some of the initiatives of the current administration when it comes to energy initiatives. The compressed natural gas initiative is one of them. Previous administration started the Decade of Gas initiative, and also the current administration is trying to ramp up domestic gas utilization. We haven't even, what we're dealing with now is what I could call associated gas, which means by the process of drilling crude oil, we come across gas and we capture it and try to do one or two things with it. We haven't even talked about non-associated gas. We're just going into the ground to drill to get gas out. If we begin to do that, availability will be least of our issues. Now, most experts gauge energy security with most of my colleagues have touched on that, with the 4 A's of energy security. Is it accessible? Is it acceptable to the people? Is it affordable? And is it available? We have all the resources in Nigeria to slam through these 4 A's. But there are many drawbacks. I'll go towards the compressed natural gas. With the new initiative from the federal government, compressed natural gas is the low-hanging fruit for transportation. We see the news coming out of the Middle East. Guess what's going to happen to crude oil and all the byproducts of crude oil? They might go way over the roof. Now, this is the time. If we begin to exploit these, government policies are boosting these sectors. There are lots of private investors going into the CNG. A company that I represent, we are beginning to churn out CNG vehicles. I stopped by today to fill up my work pickup truck with CNG just along Ilupeju, Mushi area. Okay, I paid 2,400 naira to fill up the tank, and it's affordable in today's context. So if we solve the availability issue with CNG, solve the affordability issue with CNG, let's begin to work on acceptance.
And yeah, so much robust conversations yesterday, and there's been a lot of talk about ease of doing business in Nigeria, but are we seeing any progress yet? This next panel, they dissected the issues and preferred actionable solutions. Take a listen.
Perhaps if we did not have these reforms, perhaps if on that day the president did not say subsidy is gone, perhaps things would have been better.
Well, let me say that I want to commend NNPC for what they're doing now. A lot of people do not know that PMS is being subsidized for us. I think about 200 and something naira on it. And that's why the position they are taking, that they are buying from Dangote and selling to other marketers, is actually to bridge the gap. I wish they could do more, because subsidy is gone may not be the right description. Is actually subsidy have been reduced. So I would say that if they could reduce further, which is looking at the low-hanging fruit that we talk about. Because when you see the low-hanging fruit, DG, NECA, and the man said the fruit is already on ground, like Taiwo also said. But the most dangerous thing is if you don't have food in view, you can actually keep fasting and endure. But when there is a promise that this food is yours, then you begin to see the saliva, the movement, and you want to catch the food. That's why government need to now look at it and say the promises that we are making, that comfort is coming, we then need to, government need to also bear additional cost. Look, I was discussing with Coleman before now. If you have, in fact, there's an investment that I was involved in a supermarket. Your 100 million has turned to 25 million.
A lot of Nigerians say they are frustrated because you are telling us to be patient. Even today, I think the president did say we should be patient. But are we seeing those signs of patience? Perhaps if there was reduction in the cost of governance, some of those could be plowed in as subsidy for the people.
I totally agree with you. I think the reality of anything for anybody is, they say leadership is by leading by example. If you tell me that I should tighten my belt, I need to see you to tighten some belt. It might not be as big as I am tightening, but at least I need to see a sign that you are tightening your. So if I'm getting lean, you too have to follow. Now, but if you are getting fatter,
and I'm getting lean. I'll query your sense of direction. Now, that's the reality we're in today. Let's just say that everybody believes that you're telling all of us to be lean. Now, the reality, just for what he said, on the case of a manufacturer, is even worse. That 100 million ton 25, believe me, 25 million cannot run inside that factory and make money to pay the salary. Because there's what is called a minimum capacity utilization of your processes, which you must match. If, for instance, a factory needs to run at 40% minimum to break even, if it goes to 25, it is losing money, because what is happening is that the material going in is being eroded by the overhead.
It's a tough situation. Let's be, there is no way you can. There is no argument, and I hope that those in the policy arena also will understand this. Even when you have a clear purpose, you know where you are going, you know the type of the economic problems that you want to solve. I believe we still need to have a kind of an idea that will help us to minimize the cost from the other side. He has mentioned typical case of the inflation and interest rate, and how the interplay between these also impact on our FX. Yes, of course. Based on the CBN's evidence, CBN said as of June this year that the money in circulation now is about 5-point-something trillion from 2.6 last year, June. So within a year, we kind of have maybe 50%, So that, from the perspective of the CBN, is a huge problem. And I believe that is one of the reasons why the drive for increasing the interest rate, has always been persistent. And of course, even when you are increasing the interest rate with the aim of capturing the inflation, the challenge is still going to be there both ways for the business people. Both ways, even if you reduce the interest rate and inflation is going at, just like I said, you have 100 million within 2 months. What you are having is actually 20 million. So it's a big challenge, and I think that globally, anywhere, what should be the most important thing is for us to see a clear signal. When the government shows the signal and says, I know what we're going through, but this is the approach, let's address this. While addressing this, there could be some little interventions here and there to ease the challenges, as I said, but I think that is the core of the problem, because if we have switched the thing now, the other way we have low interest rates and we have inflation, it becomes a national problem. It affects business will be just wrecked. People will job. So it's a big challenge, and that's why I was referring to the macroeconomic instability.
For me and for colleagues, even in the private sector with MAN, I think the stabilization bill is one of the things we think can change the narration. And it was also a positive for us when the committee was formed, the presidential committee. It takes an administration with some level of guts to get that kind of team together to actually review the kind of things they've reviewed, to make the kind of fundamental recommendations that they've made. And whether it was circumstantial or whether it was deliberate, the fact that the committee has worked assiduously and come up with those recommendations, which we have to a large extent adopted in the private sector because of the far-reaching consequences, positive consequences of those recommendations, is for us to now ensure that those recommendations, they don't go the way of the same policies that you mentioned. And that comes back to building institutions that I mentioned earlier, that beyond politics, I think it's also time that we start advocating for economic institutions that are independent, irrespective of a government that comes in.
So there are two very important policies of the government that people blame for the economic hardship. One of it is the fuel subsidy reduction, and then the flotation of the naira. And I think we have to come to a realization that the conversation or the debate should not be about whether those things should have been done or whether it would have been better if we had retained what we had before. That was not an option. Take the FS, for example. We're owing over 7 billion backlog. So it was actually a subsidy regime. FS subsidy regime was what we had. We had borrowed billions of dollars against our reserve. We're not even sure what the net was going to be. So the economy was collapsing. We didn't have the headroom to continue with that. I believe that if we had sustained that regime, we would be in a worse situation today than we are now. The subsidy reduction, if we had sustained it, the government was spending about 96% of their revenue just to service debt, and they were printing money to do everything else. When you keep printing money, the impact will be more devastating than what we have now. So that's also not an option. So the debate should be, are there other ways we could have done it, not whether we should have done it? I think that's very fundamental. If I want to sum it up, because I know our time is up, it's that the major problem we have today, the biggest challenge to the economy is the FX. If we can get FX to under 1,000, you have the impact everywhere. Inflation will come down, band A tariff will be maybe like half. You're going to have a lot of things would improve. What the data is showing us is that between June 14 last year, when Naira was floated, and now, we've actually received net inflow of FX. Yet our Naira has lost more value. So what we find is that we have significant illicit demand. You need to find a way to take that illicit demand out of the market so you can have only just legitimate demand. And the diaspora remittances of about 20 billion, we see about 4 to 5 within the official market. About 15 billion is being either externalized or finding its way to the black market. So the plan we're trying to do now is for the fiscal to complement the monetary to address this issue so that by this time next year, we have more good news to share and not what we're planning to do, but what we have done.
Definitely a lot was unpacked yesterday. The conversations touched on every part of Nigeria's economy. And, from what was said, so far, it seems like once we solve this FX issue, that's, gone into raised prices of PMS, and we're seeing energy prices rising, and we're also seeing, food prices also rising with headline inflation, food inflation. So it seems like if we're able to solve that FX issue, then that's going to dovetail into other parts, and maybe we can start seeing, regular prices again. I don't remember what it feels like to actually, experience regular prices. It's been so long. We've just been dealing with high inflation, and hopefully we can also join other central bankers in the world that are cutting rates. Now it's rate cutting season, and it'd be nice to actually see, Nigeria join that trend, at some point. Hopefully, soon we're able to tame this sky high inflation. But all eyes on the fiscal and monetary side of things. But today, as the first trading day of October, and definitely for the last trading day of September, we know the market at the end at 98,000 points, was up about 0.1% for that last trade. But for the quarter, that's for the third quarter, we see the all-share index down about 1.5%. That's if you're looking at the third quarter of 2024. So investors now be wondering what's going to play out in this fourth quarter of 2024. Will it be profit-taking, or are we going to see, some of these investors trying to cherry pick? And definitely we know the bank recapitalization, that's still, on the front burner. So we've seen some recovery, when it comes to the banking index, and we're also watching interest rates right here. We know interest rates, when they rise, it's, good for most of these banks, but also has its downside, to their profit. But year to date, 31.8%. That's still for the all-share index. So what's going to happen in this fourth quarter? We're definitely going to be unpacking that. Also on Business Incorporated, we'll get the intraday analysis, and also on Capital Market, we'll get a review of everything that's played out for this first holiday shortened trading week right here in Nigeria. So there's so much to unpack, and definitely we'll be, getting a check on how the counters actually play out. We see some counters actually, getting into recovery. We know the banking counter was suppressed for the longest time, but did start to, rise again and close about 1.1%. That was for Monday. That was the last trading day of September. Insurance, that's also financial services. That was able to get a 2.1% boost. Oil and gas, that was unchanged. the usual unchanged suspect. Industrial goods index, that closed down. That's for Monday, 1.1%. So we're seeing most of these stocks, most of these laggards, trying to show, some moves right there in the market, with investors actually, putting attention, in some of these markets. Market cap still at 56.63 trillion. So everyone's just wondering what's going to play out. What's going to be that catalyst that can drive the all-share index back above the 100,000 level. What's it going to be? We still have one more rate-setting meeting right here in Nigeria. Everyone's expecting maybe another hike, but who knows? Maybe the MPC might say, okay, maybe it's time to hold. But from what was said last time, investors don't focus on what the central bankers do, but they also focus on what was said. Forward guidance, that's what investors are going to be looking out for. So I'll give you a summary of how the markets close today. That'll be on News at 10. Thank you so much for watching. I'm Ladi Williams. I hand things back over to the Sunrise Daily team.
Well, straight to business we go. Today's business, because one of the things that we've heard over time is that whenever we hear of wars, some people are making humongous amounts of money, and of course the issue here is the Israel-Hamas war that we understand is ongoing right now. Some 181 ballistic missiles were said to have been launched into Israel by Iran, and leading to about 1,800 rocket sirens sounding across the country. And in all of it, what we understand is that one fatality has been reported of a Palestinian worker from Gaza who was killed as a result of fragments of rockets that fell in the city of Jericho in the West Bank, and some of those images that you are seeing right there. Well, Dr. Dapo Thomas joins us this morning to give us some understanding of what is going on. He is a foreign affairs analyst and an international law expert. Thank you for joining us today.
You're welcome.
So first of all, give us a general understanding. It's Israel, Hamas, there's Lebanon, there's Iran, there's Hezbollah, there's Yemen, there's Houthis. The words, what's the connection to all these?
Okay, now we are, the international system is witnessing a very disturbing development. We are beginning to see the transformation of non-state actors now becoming state actors, transforming or transiting from terrorist organizations to government, not even government organization, government itself. And this is exactly what Iran is doing in the Middle East, and for strategic reason. So for now, there are so many militia organizations, but the most prominent ones now are the Houthis in Yemen. They control 80% of they control the capital, Sana'a, and then Sana'a of Yemen. I mean, Sana'a, the capital of Yemen. So they control the capital, they control most part of North Yemen, and almost 80% of the country. The same thing now in Lebanon. There is a government in place, but Hezbollah is a very powerful, not political party. They are not even calling themselves a political party. They are a terrorist organization known to the international community, but they believe that they are a political party. So they control 30%. They are not in charge in Lebanon. Then you have Hamas, 100% in charge of Gaza. Now, my position or my thinking is that Iran has planned this in order to find a way to either distract Israel or to create a situation, a scenario for Israel where it will be very difficult to contend with all these proxies. In fact, by the time Israel finishes with the proxies, it is believed, or that is their calculation, Iran's calculation, that either they will be war weary, or they will be, their armaments will be depleted, or so many things will have happened. So they can now come in. And that is exactly what is happening now. Why? Because when Israel started with Hamas, whether we like it or not, certain percentage of the armaments will have gone in terms of destroying the machine, the tunnels, everything, the infrastructure that Hamas had already invested in Gaza. While they were still fighting Gaza, while they were still fighting Hamas, Houthis and Hezbollah, they started distracting them. So at the same time, simultaneously, Israel has been fighting continuously since October 7 last year. Israel has been fighting a three-pronged war, although they said 5 because they have some other militias. I think 1 in Syria, 1 in Damascus. So, 1 in Damascus and then maybe 1 somewhere. So, but the prominent ones are the 3 that I have mentioned. And as a result of this, Iran felt, as at yesterday, that the best time to come in now was what they did yesterday. It was a tactical thing, tactical and strategic. Why? Because they felt that if they should allow, because now Grand War had already taken place in Gaza, Grand War was about to start. In fact, it has started 3 days ago in Lebanon, southern Lebanon, and even some parts of inside Lebanon itself, Beirut itself. So the Grand War has started, and it will be very, very colossal. It will be a kind of colossal disaster for Iran if Israel should do Grand War. Already the personnel, the military personnel, had been depleted completely. The experienced ones, the most terrifying ones, you know. I'm talking about Nasrallah, and all his lieutenants. So they have already depleted their personnel, their military personnel. So now they want to go for their infrastructure. And that is exactly, the calculation of Iran when it distracted yesterday, because it knew that a lot of things will be unearthed in Lebanon if Israel should go for the ground operations, which they had gone. So now Israel got that strategy. They understood the tactical move. So they are pretending till now, they have not responded to the missiles, 180 missiles, that Iran fired into their territory.
They already declared that there is going to be consequences.
No. Declaration is different. Okay. I'm saying they have not taken any action. Yeah, sure. Instead of being distracted, they concentrated on Beirut, Lebanon. So as at yesterday, they were still firing. In fact, they have ignored till date, maybe it's 24 hours now, they have ignored Iran. Because, you see, the war Israel is fighting now is not necessarily the military action kind of. It's about intel. And they have the technology, they have the information, they have everything. The way Netanyahu spoke at United Nations General Assembly, you would know that they have their information. Mm-hmm. So they know, and they understand that it was a distraction for them if they should stop the ground operation in Lebanon.
So Israel knew that this was going to happen. Is that what you're saying?
Of course. There is no way they will be fighting Iran's proxies, 3 at the same time. And Iran knows how much it has invested in these 3 proxies.
One of the fears that a number of people might have is, look, Israel is at war, and now Iran is venturing in. Okay, once world powers begin to step in, are we not beginning to look at World War III?
I'm not seeing any world war happening as a result of this, and I will tell you why. Israel is a nuclear power, courtesy of Argentina, which sold yellow cake to them. Yellow cake is uranium oxide, which is part of the nukes that you use in making nuclear weapon. So by 1965, they got their nuclear weapon. So they are nuclear power. Naturally, Israel does not want Iran to be a nuclear power nation. Why? Because it doesn't feel comfortable. It doesn't feel comfortable with any of these terrorist organizations. Iran is a country, but it's more or less a terrorist state. You understand? It's more or less a state. When you start nurturing terrorist organizations and you are transforming them from terrorist organizations to government, then you are more or less a terrorist nation. So what they are doing is to make sure that Iran does not produce. U.S. has been doing that. U.S. did that during the time of Obama. They gave them certain amount of money. Why? Because, you know, these people belong to NPT. You know, they are part of the signatory to the NPT. And they must not, you know, they are signatories to the NPT, so they must not produce, they must not manufacture nuclear weapons. So, but there must be some compensation. So the compensation may come in terms of either you lift the sanctions already imposed, or you give them certain monetary concessions, you know, which was what Obama did. But Trump did not like it in any way, so he stopped it. By 2018, he stopped. He stopped the something once it expired. So he said he would not be paying. Why, if they want to go ahead to do nuclear, to produce, let them go ahead and then we'll deal with them. So Netanyahu was never happy with Obama's position, with what he did to allow Iran to continue. So as at today, Iran had developed its uranium. It has enriched its uranium to the level that it can produce a nuclear weapon in 12 days. That's what the IAEA is saying, that in 12 days they will produce nuclear weapon. I don't think they have finished, they have succeeded. I mean, they have been able to do that completely. And it was a very wrong move they made yesterday. If you have 12 days to produce your uranium, I mean, to produce your nuclear weapons, and you don't know what kind of information that Israel has, don't forget, Iraq was almost making similar nuclear weapon as at 1981. It was this same Israel that destroyed the nuclear reactor. They destroyed it completely. They destroyed the nuclear reactor, you know, in 1981. So now Iran wants to build its own. So you made this move, firing 180 missiles into Israel's territory, and yet you don't know what information they have as it relates to your nuclear weapon development. So now if Israel, and you know, the way Israel is taking this thing, I am believing, I mean, the Israel that I know, you know, haven't worked most, I mean, I haven't done most of my work on them. The Israel that I know, I believe that behaving this, I mean, exhibiting this kind of confidence and trying to ignore or pretend to ignore what Iran has done. Already they are planning, I know. But I don't want to speculate that US is going to join them. It's not yet a moment when US will join. If you are saying, so it depends. What can cause escalation? What can cause escalation is if Israel now destroys the uranium facility, if they have information, if they have the intel, if they know how to get it, and then they destroy, that can enrage Iran. And if that happens, what they will end up fighting with normal conventional weaponry. No more nuclear weapon. Because if Israel destroys it, that's the end. So they will now have to fight with conventional weapons. And you can't fight Israel with conventional weapons only. No, it's not possible. You can't win a war with Israel, I mean, fighting using conventional weapons. And let us even say, let us even go hypothetical. I don't see Russia joining Iran in fighting this war. No, I don't think so. The reason is that Israel is a very troublesome nation to fight with. You will see from all over, you will see that the tendency is there. Most of the nations, whether you are China, whether you are this, whether you can even see, US, the way they are pampering them. So it's difficult. Nobody wants to incur the wrath of Israel. So I don't see Russia fighting against Israel.
Okay, but from the comments of the president of Israel, or the prime minister of Israel, when he spoke at the UN, it seems like there is another angle to the war, and that is the war of narratives. When he was saying that, look, I came, even though I didn't want to come, because I wanted to change some narratives. What do you think he's talking about there?
Well, I was talking about, you see, the picture being projected by the media, international media, is presenting Israel as a barbaric nation. Barbaric, that is killing children and killing women. Because most of the time, most of the reports are always about 90 people died, mostly women and children. So he went to explain and to show pictures of how and why they are having this kind of high rate of collateral damage. What happens? What is happening is that most of the civilian institutions, the civilian buildings and everything had been commandeered by the terrorists, by Hamas, by Hezbollah. So they have they are planted most of their rockets inside civilian houses, inside ordinary houses, instead of creating military bases and then, setting up their own something. But they know that once they do that, Israel will definitely target them. So they like this kind of outrage against Israel, because there is no way, once you fire a building, the children there will die, the women there will die. So that's what they are presenting. But nobody is saying, nobody is looking at the fact that, nobody is talking to the terrorists. Nobody's talking to Hamas. Nobody's talking to Hezbollah. That, look, why are you involving children and mothers? Why are you planting all these things in the homes?
Which also draws the question of how you think it should be addressed when the Prime Minister of Israel says, Netanyahu says that people should get out of harm's way. Women and children should be taken away from areas of harm and all those things. How do you see that happening?
That's what is happening, because they have already told them to evacuate. They should move. But what is causing the outrage is that they have not made provision for where these children and these women will go. So if you want to do this kind of thing, but that's being sentimental in the sense that they are fighting war. And so once they are fighting war, they are not expected to be moralistic, to the point that they now have to be spending their money. He even went to the extent of saying that they spent their money to buy food for the women, for the people of Gaza. But this food will now be taken over by Hamas militias. And those ones will now go and be feeding themselves. They will leave the children, they will leave the women. So it's very difficult, to suggest now that they should find a way how to move those people, the children and the women, away from their homes.
Okay. Well, a woman is about to get in this conversation now. Malpe, please go ahead.
All right.
Well, thank you very much, Dr. Dakwa Thomas. It's great to, listen to your analysis. However, now, we know that Hamas drew first blood from Israel last year with the attack it had on young people and the concert they were organizing in Israel, which Israel has now relentlessly attacked Gaza for. There are those who have said, look, what Israel has done is an overreaction. Even its allies are weary and, have been looking for how to have, ceasefire and all of that. Even the position that Israel has taken has made, the defending the war it has waged on Gaza very, very difficult. People who ordinarily would have supported the war are now, against this war. You have countries like Spain who are speaking up. You have South Africa, our own on the continent here, saying that they had already taken Israel to the International Criminal Court. These are some of the things that we have seen as a result of what has happened since Hamas, first of all, drew blood and Israel decided to attack. At what point would you say, that enough is enough in this war? At what point would we have argued that the amount of collateral damage that Israel has exacted in the process of trying to, take out leaders of certain groups, what he's done now in Lebanon, at what point will we say it is justifiable?
Well, it's always very difficult when war breaks out. It's always very difficult to measure the statistics. If you killed 1,200 people in somebody's country, you carried, you actually invaded the country, and then you killed 1,200 people. You took away hostages of maybe about 200 plus. And these same people now want to revenge. And it's at their discretion to determine when to stop. It is at their discretion. It is always very difficult in war to say that, okay, because these people killed 1,200, took 500 people, so you now want to go to Gaza to also go and kill 1,200, or to go and also take hostages of 500. When war breaks out, particularly all-out war like this, definitely there won't be any sentiment. There is no sentimentality in war. So once it is at discretion, no matter the kind of, you can see, even the US supplying them the arms, giving them the arms, deploying armaments and everything for them, has told them several times to go into, have a ceasefire, but they have refused. So it is at their discretion. But on our own side, we can be moralizing that, no, this is not fair. How many people were killed? Only 1,002. And now you have gone as far as killing 38,000, 40,000 people. You understand? So the best thing is to always avoid war. Don't go into war if you do not have the capability to respond to whatever aggression your opponent or your adversary is going to unleash on you. Don't start any war if you cannot fight it to the logical conclusion. Don't start any war. Once you start it, you can never know, you can never tell how it will end. They never anticipated, I'm talking about Hamas now, never anticipated, and in any case, they said it was even at the prompting. Those who are saying are not even your ordinary states. I'm talking of Jordan. I'm talking of Saudi Arabia. Giving information that, look, this particular thing was done so that Iran can do this, can do that. Iran has its own agenda. And since Hamas is a proxy, they can send it. I have a language for it. It's Iran state. You understand? But they call it proxy. So they can send them any message. And that was what they did. Unfortunately, it has backfired. They never anticipated that Israel would go this to this extent in achieving the objective. And before they even went to the war, they stated about 5 objectives. And until they achieve these goals, these objectives, they will never relent. They will never stop. So it's unfortunate that they were the first to strike. The same thing with Iraq. The same thing with Iran now. I would have expected, because Israel is hungry. Israel is hungry, and they have dealt with the Houthis, they have dealt with Hamas, they are now going, they have practically dealt with the Hezbollah. I'm so sure that this kind of comprehensive attainment, this kind of comprehensive triumph may want to prompt them to go and attack Iran, and that will be very suicidal for them. That is when the whole world will now be against them. Unfortunately, once you attack any nation, you can see the nation, all the nations condemning Russia for attacking Ukraine or for invading Ukraine. Once you are the first aggressor, you are not likely to command the collective sentiment or maybe sympathy of most of the nations. So that is what they have done now. They shouldn't have attacked Israel. They should have waited. Israel definitely will want to attack because their mission is to ensure that they deal with all these proxies and Iran itself. So Iran anticipated whatever and then decided to go and do 180. If the fact that they have even stopped to fire missiles again, because I don't understand, because you have said two things now, and they are two different things. And in war, you need to be specific. They said they have declared war on Israel. That's one. Meanwhile, I saw it again. They said that was a retaliation for the killing of Nasrallah. You understand?
So it's a whole load of stuff to unpack, and I think Marco is still on the floor. But I understand that we need to, for those of you who are with us on DSTV, the Oyo State government is commissioning local government house and staff training school and at the State Secretariat Local Government House, Ibadan, Oyo State. So you can continue with us here and now, but for those who are watching us on DSTV, that's the information that you may be seeing on your screen from after this particular moment. So, but I don't know if Marco is done, but so where do we go from here? What is Nigeria's place in all of this conundrum? Do we have anything to fear? Because it's only natural, right?
Two things. One, I belong to the school of thought that Nigeria, from this moment, should start vocalizing its position on some of these international issues or developments. All these things are being recorded for history and posterity. So you need to be talking. What's your position? What do you think? Even if you say you are non-aligned, you can still make a statement, a dispassionate statement, a statement that will not even commit you to any of the two sides. I mean, asking for peace is a normal thing. You understand? Nigeria calls for peace. Nigeria calls for this. Nigeria calls for cessation of hostilities. Nigeria wants a ceasefire. You are not taking sides. You know, so you are being recorded. Your voice is being heard internationally, and that's good for you. Then the second part of it is that you probably start learning from some of these things. You start learning how you can, supposing there is a third world war, an outbreak of third world war, what will be your position? Are you going to remain non-aligned? Are you going to get yourself involved militarily? So what are the things you're going to consider? And then you start taking position now. There was, during this Al-Qaeda thing, the 9/11, so most people were joining US and everything. So when US saw that the number was not as high as it had anticipated, so US now told, George Bush now told everybody, most of the nations, he told the nations all the way, that if you are not with us, you are against us. So everybody started registering. Everybody started taking side. So now, in a situation like that, what will happen if a third world war happens? So what will be your position? Are you going to take side with Iran? Are you going to take side with US? Are you going to take side with Israel? So, but that may not be something you make pronouncement. It's not something you. The first one, yes, you can pronounce. You can state your position without necessarily taking any side. But this one, you have it as a policy. You tell your foreign policy thinkers, you tell them, now let us meet. In a case, in an unlikely situation, or maybe in a likely situation that a war erupts, what should we do?
Okay.
What will be our position?
Well, thank you so much for your time this morning, Dr. Dako Thomas, Foreign Affairs Analyst and International Law Expert. Truly appreciate your time today.
Thank you for having me.
We have some reactions. Marco, Chamberlain.
Well, we've got this one that came through from Ademola Alalade, who says, the president's speech, that's what he's talking about this time, says it was a bit disconnected from the people as most of his statements show that the hardship being experienced is not felt by those in government. Even though he mentioned some of the achievements recorded, many felt they're on their own.
Well, Pastor Law Alpha Cross says the president's speech was laden with the clarion call for Nigerians to be patient with the policies of government that have not translated to economic rejuvenation and prosperity. But the question is, does an empty belly hear the gospel?
It depends on the kind of gospel. If it's infrastructure gospel, stomach infrastructure gospel.
It's a big question.
All right, guys, that wraps it up today. We thank you all for watching. We'll see you next time. I'm Chamberlain, so goodbye.
Thank you for watching. I'm Malkwell Gun Yusuf. Keep your eyes open and keep your ears to the ground.
Absolutely. And I'm Ayo Makine. Do have a beautiful day.